Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy. For nerds by nerds, hanging out with
Ted.
And today we're delving back into Volo's Guide to Monsters. It's not always easy being green with Lizardfolk.
I'm going to jump down in the description below. You can sign up for Nerdarchy, the newsletter. It's a great way to get gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy.
Alright, back for another expedition into Volo's Guide to Monsters. This time we're looking at another monster PC race, Lizardfolk. I'm sure this is going to be a favorite of yours.
We're jumping down to page 111 for the Lizardfolk, and there's definitely a couple times while reading this it made me chuckle.
Yeah, there's some funny things. As usual, guys, the link will be in the description below, possibly even a pinned post. If you want to pick up your own Volo's Guide, we were fortunate enough to snag the special edition version sent to us by Nerdstock over in Austin, Texas. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, mine's not here yet, but
someday
it will be. Because, I gotta have the collector's edition.
First of all, you have the quote at the very beginning.
So, it says, if you're considering taking a scaled one along on an adventure, remember this important fact. The strange inhuman glint in its eyes as it looks over you is the same look you might give a freshly grilled steak. So that's Tordek, the dwarf fighter and adventurer. Okay,
there's a couple things. One, I just like the quote. And two, they brought back Tordek from 3rd edition. so that quote is probably from a 3rd edition book somewhere. And over again, what they really do reiterate about Lizardfolk is the fact that how alien their mindset is. So, matter of fact, Alien Minds is like the first heading that they have under it, followed by Cold and Calculating, Utility and Survival, Hapless Soft Ones, Lizardfolk Personality.
And then it gets into the actual mechanics of what you as a Lizardfolk PC would actually get.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about them is they are only going to think out, like, at most a season ahead. So it limits their growth because they can't plan significantly for the future. And they're more concerned about their immediate needs and pleasures more than more than the other humanoid races that are actually out there. They really don't care about gold. They don't really care about other humanoids unless they think that, okay, in the near future they're going to be able to do something for me.
Their emotional perception of the world isn't based on how they feel about the world, but they just assign feelings to things. Like, the way they describe it, like, I actually had to read it a couple times. And even then, I don't feel like I really firmly grasp what they're saying.
Right.
So, like, they use the example of where if I see a troll, I get scared. And where a Lizardfolk sees the trolls, it just recognizes it as scary.
That is a dangerous creature, and I will approach that situation with due cause and apt preparability because of what it is. So
it also talks about, while they tend to be aggressive, they don't get angry.
Right.
Like, so they would never be aggressive towards a troll because the troll they've already defined as a dangerous creature, a scary creature, right?
So they're going to be aggressive towards things that they would consider prey, or that they could, in essence, in their eyes, defeat.
Yes.
So it's like, oh, they're
friends.
I'm gonna be aggressive towards you because I consider myself essentially superior.
Well, yeah, they do, but without the haughtiness of superiority that might be attributed to another race.
Right.
Like, for them, it's very much. It's not. It's a fact, right? It's just a fact. It's not really so much how they feel about the other race, where an elf's haughtiness is just because they believe they're better than the other person, whether it's true or not, right? It could be just based off a belief.
Exactly.
Where the Lizardfolk don't have that. It is or isn't. Like, they're just facts, and they array them in front of them and assess them. Troll, run away. Human, possible food. Right. So it's interesting. It's one of the more interesting sections that I've read.
And that's one of the things that they actually talked about, is that food source is, they don't, like, it didn't really say anything about an afterlife in here, but it did say that, all right, you're an adventuring group, and one of your party members dies, at base idea, it's going to see that fallen friend is now food because it no longer serves a purpose because it's dead.
Yeah, not only that, dude, too, like, it kind of explains it in a sense, too, is, like, if Joe the fighter was your adventuring companion, and it, like you said, he served a purpose and he was useful, so this created pleasurable emotions in the lizard folk. So in essence, they like Joe the fighter because he serves a purpose. Well, once the instant Joe the fighter dies, not only does he no longer serve a purpose, but in the lizard folk's mind, he went from being Joe the fighter to just being meat.
Yes,
he's not Joe the fighter anymore. Joe the fighter was useful. This thing is not. This is meat, steak. So it does talk about that. They have a very interesting section, which is, and this is where the most humor I think came from, for both of us, and that was the Lizardfolk quirks. Yes.
So these are too awesome to not share. As per always, you have the ability to have this random chart, and we get a D8. On a 1, you hate waste and see no reason not to scavenge fallen enemies. Fingers are tasty and portable. Number 2, you sleep best while mostly submerged in water. 3, money is meaningless to you. 4, you think that there are only 2 types of species of humanoid, lizard folk and meat. Number 5, this is my favorite, you learn to laugh. You use this talent in response to all emotional situations to better fit in with your comrades. So, oh look, Joe the fighter just died. I'm fitting in because I'm having an emotional response. Number 6, you still don't understand how metaphors work. That doesn't stop you from using them at every opportunity. Number 7, you appreciate the soft humans who realize they need chainmail and swords to match the gifts you were born with. And 8, you enjoy eating your food while it's still wriggling.
Yeah.
So, very, very fun to put in there.
There's one quote in here that it describes the lizard folks. The way they did it is really good, and basically it says their habitat, the swamps they live in, is miles from civilization. But those miles from civilization is so much closer than the 2 different mindsets of other humanoids and lizard folks. And I'm kind of paraphrasing it, probably made it much longer than it really says. But it's kind of like it sums it up, and it's really interesting. Their naming conventions are essentially female, male. They don't see a difference. It's just lizard folk, and they speak Draconic, and generally they give names to things based off of descriptions, and humanoids confuse them with their names because their names aren't descriptive.
So, like, how is Dave letting me know that that's you? I can't look at you and see Dave.
Correct.
So they will tend to rename their party members based off of their own observations. So if the first time they encounter a party member and they're being cowardly, they might very well be like, all right, you're now coward. And that's gonna create some issues. If this guy is carrying around a big sword, he might just be referred to as sword, and there might be a confusion when he no longer has that sword.
Oh, that being said, though, a particularly clever lizard folk might name them after something they consider cowardly, like an animal or something. But the cool thing is, it does give a list of names in Draconic, as well as the meaning.
Right.
So that's kind of cool. It's a nice little tidbit they put in there, and of course, obviously, using that, you can go and find other sources of Draconic, and basically create your own names from there.
And I know some of those things were done in Draconic back in 3rd edition, because I remember Dragon Therastrix, how are we going to pronounce it, from back then.
Yeah, well, my Draconic isn't very fluent, so...
Well, I just remembered that particular term.
Now moving on to the actual traits of the lizard folk.
So they get a plus 2 to con, plus 1 to wisdom, which I thought is very nice, and it's fitting towards the natural element of the lizard folk.
Sharp senses, and they're hardy.
Right, and I was expecting it to be yet another here's strength and con bonus, because they're all over the place. So I was happy to see that. Their alignment, they lean towards neutral. Their speed, both walking and swimming, is 30. So it's kind of cool that they get a swim speed. Makes sense. They have a bite attack that does a D6. which is cool, and it does piercing damage as opposed to standard bludgeoning damage for an unarmed attack. They're a cunning artisan, which allows them to essentially take a slain beast and turn it into something. And it doesn't actually say that you make anything of an inferior quality. You could have an artisan type character, and like everything that you do is made out of the natural materials as opposed to actually forging.
Yeah, it's blowgun, needles, darts, javelins.
You get shield club, javelin, darts, or blowgun needles. So nothing that valuable. Right.
But possibly useful in the game.
Right. We get hold breath. They can hold their breath for 15 minutes. Hunter's lore. They get two choices of skills from animal handling, nature, perception, stealth, and survival. They have natural armor, which gives them a base AC of 13 plus their dex, very similar to the way the draconic sorcerer gets. So don't be a draconic sorcerer lizardfolk.
It's not going to be that useful. But something that actually makes them good for like rogues.
Could be any other type of sorcerer. You could be a wizard. If you put a decent dex or if you get a decent dex and you go wizard, you could actually have a pretty decent armor class, and then you take shield.
Yeah, well, in actual shield, it stacks with the piece of armor shield as well.
It does.
So yeah, you could start off as a lizard folk with an 18 armor class with only a shield. Well, much like a barbarian.
Right.
But if you wanted to be a dex based fighter and not wear armor, it's a very viable option for the lizard folk.
Indeed. You get Hungry Jaws, which is kind of interesting. You have an attack that allows you to, once per short or long rest, you can make a bite that you heal a number of points equal to your constitution. So they kind of get their own little drain. I thought that was kind of interesting. And then they can speak Draconic and Common. Now it says that they can write it, but it says earlier on in the actual RP stuff that they don't write things down, so they can read it. Everything's got the ability to read and write in this game, but I felt that they should have not had the ability to read.
They should be illiterate. Yeah. So yeah, well, and if you can read, you can generally write and vice versa. So yeah, it's just 5th edition. Like everybody gets to do kind of like the same thing.
If I were to make a lizard folk, actually, as I was reading, I was already starting to formulate this character, and it's more about concept than about what mechanics, because he sees things as food, and because there's that whole drive for pleasure. He wants to eat everything. He wants to not literally consume everything and just be this giant slug, but he wants to taste everything.
You know what they would actually they really would make they'd make very good rangers.
Yes.
The con wisdom works for ranger. Their natural armor is going to be very useful for a ranger character. They would make very good rangers.
I think so as well.
And you need an alligator. As your pet.
I don't know if an alligator is low enough on the...
Probably not, but you need an alligator.
Can you flavor something, one of the smaller ones as an alligator that's growing?
I think an actual alligator itself isn't that high though, so it might be close. But if you get a DM that's willing to work with you, maybe you can make that happen.
I think that's a concept that I'm gonna begin putting together. Not that I have any campaigns on the horizon, but
I figured this would be your favorite of all the Volo's Guide.
Yeah, I mean, you know me and Scary Folk, so
yes, you've always been a fan of the lizard folk. And actually, when they shifted from being lizard men to lizard folk, now I've always really enjoyed the lizard men from AD&D, yep. And I greatly enjoyed the look and the aesthetic of them. But at the same time, in 3rd edition, when
some pretty cool artwork.
They made them more colorful. They added frills and spines to them. All of that actually works really well as well. So I like the variety they've added to lizard folk. Anyway, guys, comment section below. Let us know what you think. Are you any of you playing a lizard folk in your game? While you're at it, like, share, and subscribe.
You can patronize us in a good way over on Patreon.
So until next time,
stay nerdy.